Hey guys, Loading Gears here. Welcome back to my Xenosaga lore series. In the last videos, we went over what I call Act 1. During Act 1, we covered the big organizations and the big characters like Udo and Wilhelm, and the phenomena that make up the Xenosaga universe, like the UM and different dimensions in the Xenosaga universe and the collective unconscious. In these next few videos, we're going to cover what I call Act 2. During Act 2, we're going to dive into the main characters of the story and the events that tie directly into the Xenosaga games. So, let's continue. Chapter 6, The Zohar Incident. Between the years TC 4700 and TC 4747, two things happen. 1. Assault Maneuver Weapon System mechas were produced, also known as AMWSs, and pronounced like AIMs for some reason. These were giant mechas piloted by humans and were used as advanced weapons. They became the standard through the Federation and Ormus, as both Vector Industries and Hyams produced them. I wonder why. The other thing that happens is that a lot of people who have a hand to play in the next 3 games are born. They vary from background one-time characters to main characters. Because of this, I will not give them each separate sections. There's no way I'm going through each of them like I did before Pied Piper. I will, however, run through them as quickly as possible in chronological order. Celos, Joachim Mizrahi, Hakushin White, also known as Professor, Helmer, Sue Uzuki, Aoi Uzuki, Julie Niwashiro, Margulis, Stubb, also known as Boss, Kazuchi Moriyama, Matthews, Andrew Cherenkov, Jin Uzuki, Pellegrini, Vendercam, Louis Virgil, Lapis Roman, Tony, Kevin Winnicott, Kanan, Rubido, Albedo Piazzolla, Satsurin, Negrito, Hammer, Sakura Mizrahi, Scott, Herman, Alan Ridgely, Shion Uzuki, Shelly Godwin, Tagashi Yukihira, Mary Godwin, Miyuki Itsumi, and finally, Doctus. Okay. Now let's go back and bring some focus to some events that happened between these births. By the year 4730, the immigrant fleet people had spread to several systems. In these systems, they lived in several planets, one of these being a planet called Zohar, and another one was called Miltia in the Miltian system. The autonomous planet Zohar started invading other autonomous planets that had immigrant fleet followers. I'm honestly not sure what an autonomous planet is. I'm picturing a planet that is alive and makes decisions on its own, but that's just ridiculous, so I'm guessing what it means is that they're planets that are part of the immigrant fleet, but to an extent govern themselves, much like the states of the United States. Note, make sure not to confuse Zohar with Zohar. The golden monolith we've been talking about since the first video is the Zohar. The planet's name that we're talking about now is Zohar. Anyways, this invasion caused a bloody incident called the Zohar Incident, and its details are still largely unknown. Some people speculate that immigrant fleet extremists in Zohar fear that the planet Miltia would join the Galaxy Federation. However, other people believed that the whole incident was caused by Galaxy Federation Salvators posing as immigrant fleet extremists in order to give the Federation a reason to step in and take control of Miltia via a military occupation. Either way, this incident wouldn't last more than a year, but it sparked a massive power struggle between the immigrant fleet and the Galaxy Federation that would last decades. In order to help with the fight during the Zohar incident, the Galaxy Federation started making super soldiers who would be born as adults and be taught to know nothing but combat. One of these super soldiers was a man named Andrew Cherenkov. He will become more relevant when we start the first game, but for now, it's worth noting that even though he was created for the sole purpose of fighting in the Zohar incident, by the time he entered the fight in the Zohar incident, the fight had ended, and he proved to be little to no use during the fight. This left him with a sense of having no purpose in the world, as he was born solely for the purpose of fighting. Chapter 7, You Are TVs. Back when Dimitri came into contact with Udu, Udu left a trace of itself in Dimitri's consciousness. This is what caused Dimitri's feeling of extreme loneliness, because he felt the loneliness of Udu, who was a lone being in his own dimension. By the year TC 4740, Dmitry Yuriev had managed to use the tools of his Yuriev Institute, now based on the planet Zavarov on the Vartas system, to take the trace of Udu in his consciousness and reverse engineer it to produce artificial Udu waves in an encephalon. Using these artificial waves, he began to conduct experiments to perfect his artificial wave to be as much a replica of Udu as possible. This way, using an Udu simulator, he would be able to understand Udu in a much deeper level, as he would not need to reach out to the real Udu to research him. Instead, he would be able to use these artificial Udu waves, which are easier to contact, control, and contain. Part of his experiments with Udu involved the Udu Retrovirus project, aka the You Are TV project. This project would see Yuriev create 669 clones of himself, which possessed anti-Udu waves. The You Are TVs were tasked with destroying Udu by forming a spiritual link with each other to focus their anti-Udu waves onto Udu. However, this was a task given to them merely as a way to motivate them, give them a sense of purpose. In reality, Yuriev knew that this would not only not destroy Udu, but it would destroy the You Are TVs and the planet itself, due to thermal energy produced by their encounter. To Dimitri, this was simply yet another experiment to have a full understanding of Udu. It is worth noting that Dimitri has been transferring his consciousness to other bodies since he gained that ability, thanks to the experiments that were conducted on him. This means that the body he used to clone the You Are TVs is probably not his original body. This also means that the body he used during the point in time is not the same he had during Pied Piper. I only used these pictures of him during Pied Piper because there are no other pictures of him showing his past bodies. Well, there is one from Pied Piper, but it's in that horrible 2005 cell phone quality. Out of the 669 You Are TVs that were created, only 4 are worth noting. These are the 4 variants and were born in TC 4740. What makes them variants is not only that they have different hair colors and eye colors from the rest of them, but that they are tasked with an extra role not given to the rest of the You Are TVs and thus possess other abilities. Also, they have individual personalities and thoughts, whereas the other You Are TVs, also known as the standard You Are TVs, function as more of a hive mind. These 4 variants are You Are TV variant number 666, also known as Rubido. You Are TV variant number 667, also known as Albedo. You Are TV variant number 668, also known as Citrine. And You Are TV variant number 669, also known as Negredo. Rubido and Albedo were born conjoined twins. So even though the You Are TVs consider themselves brothers, especially the variants, Rubido and Albedo are the only 2 You Are TVs who are actual brothers. When they were born, they had the ability to speed up and halt their cell growth. However, when they were separated, their abilities were split as well, and Albedo kept the ability to speed up cell growth, while Rubido kept the ability to stop cell growth. Rubido still considers Albedo to be a part of him, and often says that he can feel his right heartbeat, meaning Albedo, as they were conjoined from their backs and Albedo's heart was, for a while, part of Rubido's right chest. Rubido's task as variant number 666 was to be the link master and leader of the You Are TVs. Having the strongest anti-Udu waves and being the strongest variant, he was the only You Are TV that was able to form the spiritual link between the You Are TVs and channel their anti-Udu waves. This also meant that he was responsible for protecting the You Are TVs from Udu's waves, as his spiritual link prevented Udu from infecting them. Rubido also has the ability to enter a state called Red Dragon Mode, which unleashes all his power and makes him incredibly powerful. Because of this, he is sometimes called the Red Dragon. Albedo, as You Are TV variant number 667, has no real special purpose. This probably means that Rubido was meant to be a single You Are TV and that Albedo was born by mere chance. Having the ability to speed up his cell growth, however, Albedo is essentially immortal and cannot die no matter what injuries he receives.
Like this.
Albedo also has an extreme attachment to his twin brother, Rubido, and is very protective over him. Citrine's and Negredo's task, as You Are TV variant number 668 and 669, is to monitor Rubido and, if need be, eliminate him if his red dragon power goes out of control. This is why they were called the Executioners. For this, they are implanted with a power that can rival Rubido's red dragon mode, although Negredo hides it. Negredo is burdened with this task as he and Rubido grow to be best friends. Citrine, however, being very loyal to her father, Dimitri, embraces her role. Citrine is a rare URTV being a female type. The female type variants were created solely for maintaining the viability of the URTV cell culture, which degenerates after each successive round of cloning. Negredo has a special ability of being able to telepathically connect with Albedo and Rubido, and even being able to injure them telepathically if needed. It is unsure if he's able to do this with other humans, but I hope the answer is no, because he never does it, and if he could, it would be very useful. Chapter 8: Gnosis. By this point in time, the aforementioned Joachim Mizrahi and Julie Niwashiro have met and are married, changing Yuli's name to Julie Mizrahi. Joachim and Julie have a child named Sakura Mizrahi. The same year the URTV variants are born. Unfortunately, Sakura was born with a congenital brain defect that started affecting her at a very young age. This caused her central nervous system to shut down, severing the neural pathways that recognize the outside world and allow her to express herself. She could, however, still perform basic motor skills and even play the piano. The defect was described as hypersensitivity to the synchronicity of the UMN, and implies that somehow her mind had connected to the upper domain. Not the UMN, not the imaginary domain, but the upper domain where Uru resides. Joachim Mizrahi, being a genius of a scientist, founded the Mizrahi Cerebral Sciences Research Center, or MCSRC for short, for the purposes of finding a cure for his daughter. This endeavor was sponsored and funded by Vector Industries, of course. Now, why would Wilhelm help fund this project? Because as we know by now, everything Wilhelm does is for a purpose. Well, it turns out that Sakura's sickness had something to do with Uru's waves, and the research Joachim Mizrahi conducted benefited both Vector and the Galaxy Federation, as it helped him understand Uru better. The MCSRC was founded on Mictum, the planet that was once called Abraxas. There, Joachim would not only focus on finding a cure for his daughter, but he would also run experiments on the Zohar in an isolated facility under the Archon Cathedral. The same cathedral where Voyager made his debut as a testament. During one of the experiments on the Zohar by the Galaxy Federation, something went wrong, and the Zohar unleashed, for the first time, a horde of Gnosis into the real number domain. This introduces a new phenomenon into the story, a phenomenon called Gnosification. This would probably be a good time to explain in more detail what a Gnosis is and how the universal structure works, so let's put a bookmark on this chapter for now, and return to the beginning. Like I said before in the first video, every living thing in the real number domain of the lower domain has a consciousness that exists in the imaginary number domain. However, this consciousness is anchored by the real number domain bodies. Because of this, their physical bodies work almost as a blindfold. This is why in most cases, humans can only interact with and experience the real number domain, because their consciousness are unaware of the imaginary number domain. However, once a human dies, their consciousness is freed from the anchor of the real number domain bodies and can now experience and roam through their imaginary number domain. The imaginary number domain is a place where everything has been freed. This includes emotion and feelings. This is why Uru's influence is stronger here. This means that people's consciousness are vulnerable and open to other consciousnesses' malice and darkness, which they would usually try to keep hidden. Not only that, but the moment they stop being anchored to the real number domain bodies, they start being drawn into the unus mundus, almost like a type of gravity field. The human consciousness naturally fears this, as they wish to remain an individual and not be assimilated into the Unus Mundus. This fear begins to make a consciousness fear and loathe everything around it. But if this fear isn't strong enough, then eventually the consciousness will be assimilated into the Unus Mundus. However, some consciousness do manage to stay outside of the Unus Mundus, whether because of a strong enough sense of self or strong enough fear of assimilation. Because of this, they begin to pull further and further apart from the Unus Mundus, and as they do so, they begin to turn into Gnosis. As in Gnosis, they become beings of pure rejection, fear, and hate. This can be seen when they step into the real number domain, as they begin attacking everything and everyone in sight for no particular reason. It is worth noting that Gnosis do not form groups of hordes. The reason why they seem like they're grouped up when they step into the real number domain is simply because what makes them step into the real number domain is the light of the Zohar. Gnosis are naturally drawn to the light of the Zohar. When they get close enough to the light, they are transferred to the real number domain. This is why they come in hordes, not because they consciously group up or cooperate. They just happen to meet in the same place. Such a thing would not make sense for beings who know nothing but rejection and fear. In fact, it is possible that the Gnosis can't even recognize the existence of other Gnosis. However, Gnosis with similar wavelengths do end up merging into a larger Gnosis. Even in this state of unison, they are unaware of each other. It's almost like as if you lived in an apartment complex with other people, but were not aware that those other people lived in the apartment complex. This knowledge can help you understand why the power of anima will inevitably destroy the world. You see, all three domains, the real lower, the imaginary lower, and the upper, are all built upon each other. Together, they all form our universe. If one domain were to collapse, it would be like taking out a brick from a pile of bricks. The other pieces would come down with it. Now, keep in mind, collapsing and destroying are not the same thing. Every living thing and planet in the real number domain can be destroyed, but the real number domain itself would still exist. It would be intact. However, if the fabric of what makes the real number domain comes apart, that is what would make it collapse. So with that being said, the fabric of the imaginary number domain is based on the idea that all consciousness are interconnected. This is why the Unus Mundus is the natural destination for most consciousness. However, these stubborn freaking Gnosis don't seem to understand that, but a few consciousness rejecting assimilation and becoming Gnosis doesn't really have much of an effect on the integrity of the imaginary number domain. But a few consciousness rejecting the Unus Mundus over thousands and thousands of years starts to take a toll on the integrity of the imaginary number domain. This means that naturally, the imaginary number domain will collapse because humans need to fuck things up even in death. This is why Yeshua was created by the Unus Mundus with his power of anima that would act as a failsafe for the universe, because the universe collapsing is almost an inevitability. When the imaginary number domain reaches a critical point, Yeshua's power of anima will activate and destroy, not collapse, the whole lower domain. However, this is a vicious circle because people whose consciousness resonate with the power of anima turn into Gnosis, meaning that the existence of the universe's failsafe, the power of anima, is speeding up the process which will make the failsafe necessary. This is why Yeshua, using his power, was speeding up the destruction of the universe, and why Mary, dividing his power into 12 pieces, managed to slow down but not completely stop the destruction of the universe. This, by the way, is another reason why Udu is so interested in learning about us. He wants to understand why human consciousness are so afraid to assimilate, why some consciousness would prefer dispersal and annihilation over assimilation. It's something Udu has a very hard time comprehending as a lone being in his own domain. Anyway, let's return to the Gnosis and Gnosification. Once a Gnosis steps into the real number domain, it does what a Gnosis does and begins wreaking havoc. That is how the Gnosis do. Even though they can interact with the real number domain beings can't interact with them. This is why they have characteristics akin to a ghost. If a Gnosis so much as touches a human, a few things can happen. Most of the time, the human starts to turn into salt, killing them. Yes, a literal pile of salt. However, if the human survives, they can become infected with the fear that the Gnosis hold, and then, because of this, they themselves become a Gnosis. This is the process called Gnosification. Alright, now that we got all that out of the way, let's return to Mictum. Like I said before, an experiment with the Zohar caused Gnosis to step through to the real number domain for the first time. However, having no idea how to defend themselves against them, believing them to be some kind of alien, humans were completely annihilated on Mictum. We can see the results during the opening cutscenes of Xenosaga 3, where we see a woman helping her son to an escape pod. This woman may have been a part of Ormus, as she was in possession of the activation key of Zarathustra. This woman puts her son, Kevin, into an escape pod and gives him the activation key to Zarathustra, which is a crystal on her necklace. Apparently, she was attacked by a Gnosis because after she shuts the escape pod, leaving her son inside of it alone, she begins to Gnosify. Her son watches helplessly as his mother becomes a disfigured version of herself, and he is launched into space to find a new home on the planet Miltia. Joachim, Julie, and Sakura managed to survive as they were not on the planet at this time. They all moved to Miltia, and the Mizrahi Cerebral Sciences Research Center is also transferred over to Miltia as well. Sometime after the destruction of Abraxas, or Mictum, the little boy, Kevin, is adopted by a family because of his incredible intelligence for a kid his age. He adopts the surname Winnicott, making him Kevin Winnicott. Because of his sadness of losing everyone he knew and his anger towards the Galaxy Federation, Kevin began resenting the world and everyone in it. This made him a prime target for Wilhelm to recruit. This, plus the fact that Kevin possessed a shining will, so he could become a testament. Wilhelm confronts Kevin and tells him about the phenomena that will eventually destroy the universe inevitably. And if the destruction of the world is inevitable, then they should reset it to the beginning. Because of his hate for the people in the universe and his wish to be with his mother, it was easy to convince Kevin that the eternal recurrence was the right thing to do, and thus, Wilhelm convinces Kevin to help him with this plan. From this moment forward, Wilhelm grooms Kevin until he is old enough to help him with his plans.
I'd be happy to aid you, Kevin Winnicott.